Hey everybody, Nathan Long, President of Quest Trust Company. I hope you'll enjoy our educational series that we put on for you. We like to put on a lot of education events for our clients and people that are just looking for information about self-directed IRA. We find out that if people are educated to make good decisions, that's the best clients that we have are the ones that take the time to educate. So we like to put on a lot of education. You'll find that this is our basic guide. We talk about a lot of things, and there's a lot of references to other classes that you can also watch as you dig in deeper. This is a good class to understanding how to use self-directed IRAs, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. It's got some good basic examples and a lot of other references in there. I hope you all enjoy it, but this is our guide to building true tax-free wealth, all you need to know about investing with self-directed IRAs. Now, one of the first things or most important things that you need to understand with a self-directed IRA is the custodian is legally obligated to process any transaction that you do that isn't blatantly prohibited. When you're dealing with self-directed, they're not looking at the veracity of the investment for you, right? So it's really important that you understand anything that you invest in. You need to understand what to do when it goes wrong, right? You need to talk to your own attorneys and accountants and financial advisors and make sure that you understand everything. This class and all of our classes are for educational purposes only. They're to provide you with the right information to make good decisions about what to do with your retirement accounts. A self-directed IRA isn't really a type of IRA at all. A lot of people get confused. I'll call up and they'll be like, hey, I have this account and I want to move it over to one of those self-directed IRAs. And I go, oh, great. What type of account? Okay, well, we're going to put this into a traditional IRA. And they go, no, I want a self-directed IRA. It's kind of funny. Self-directed isn't really a type of IRA. It's just a marketing term to describe what we do. An IRA is an IRA is an IRA, is what I like to say. We're all governed the same way. We're all governed through a banking commission. We're based out of Texas, so we're overseen by the Texas Banking Commission. Our funds must be FDIC insured under most cases. Ours certainly are at Quest. So it works the same way. So then if I went to a normal custodian, one that we're all familiar with, like Charles Schwab or Fidelity, and I was like, hey, Charles, can I buy some real estate with my IRA? I want to buy this little rental property next door. He's going to go, no, you can't do that, right? Well, why? Because there is a difference between a company like Charles Schwab and a company like Quest. Charles Schwab is licensed securities agent, right? They're licensed to talk to you about your investments. They can sell you stocks, bonds, mutual fund, what we call publicly traded assets. Quest, we're none of those things. At Quest, all we do is hold private assets. What are private assets? We'll talk a lot about those, but like private entities, real estate, notes, those are good examples of private assets. So we hold private assets, they hold publicly traded assets. They're licensed to sell you those assets. We're not. We must always maintain ourselves as a neutral party. We can never get a commission on your deals. We couldn't be involved in the deals. That's kind of in a way, that's actually a big advantage to you because there's no pressure on us when we're educating you to try to persuade you one way or the other. It is pure education just for the purposes so that you can make good decisions for yourself. So that's kind of helpful. A lot of people don't understand the difference. Sometimes when you're dealing with certain types of stockbrokers and stuff, they may have a commission in mind. They may have something else that's driving the education that they're sharing with you. At Quest, you can always be sure that all of your IRA specialists that you talk to are free of any of those type of encumbrances. What's also important to understand is that most of my clients actually have an account in both places. They hold whenever you start a relationship with a self-directed IRA, doesn't mean that you end your relationship with your traditional style investment house. Most people have an account in both places. For example, if I wanted to buy a rental property, I would only move over the money that I needed from my other account to purchase that rental property and do any repairs that were done to it. As rents would come back to it, I may be building up cash in this property. I may transfer that back. We can transfer back and forth as many times as we need per year, as long as we're doing an IRA to an IRA transfer. You should be aware, though, of how long it does take to move from one custodian to the other. We're always very quickly to move it out for you if you'd like, but sometimes some custodians drag their feet a little bit or make it a little bit onerous to move this money over, while others move it very quickly. So as long as you understand that timeline, so you understand how long it takes, there's really not a reason to let large cash amounts sit with your self-directed custodian, because those cash amounts aren't earning any interest or aren't invested in anything. That's why you use both, right? You use your traditional guy to do your traditional type of investment, and all the other fun and weird stuff that you like to do, you do with Quest, and we can move back and forth. There's a lot of benefits to having a self-directed IRA. I think one of the big ones has really shown its face in this year, post-COVID. It's just that the diversifying outside of the public sector, not just diversifying, but diversifying completely outside the public sector, like in assets like real estate. Those people who have done that have probably done pretty well. I know I had during this period of time, whereas the public sector has gotten shaken pretty hard. So it allows for what I call true diversification. Of course, anytime that you're dealing with IRAs, you're looking at the tax benefits. The tax savings and tax benefits are so important to building wealth. If you spend all your time making money and it's all just going to the government, you might have some issues. One of the wonderful things about self-directed IRAs is it allows you to take the knowledge and things that you know and grow wealth, right? And sometimes you can grow these wealths completely in tax-free accounts versus creating income for yourself. There's also a lot of social benefits to a self-directed IRA. The benefits of, well, what do I mean by that? Well, most investments that people do with their retirement accounts and things like that, we often see mutual funds. And this is a pretty good strategy. You know, you're going to spread out across a lot of companies so that we can diversify. And, you know, if one goes down, hopefully others go up and so forth and so on. Over time, it works out. The problem is when you cast this wide net like that, you often pick up companies that may not be aligned either with your ethical or your political intentions, right? So you may be investing in things that you might not otherwise have invested in. Whereas if you self-direct, you typically are very closely related because you're investing in things that you know and understand, right? So if, for example, I do a lot of personally, Nathan does a lot of lending out of my retirement accounts, and I loan to a real estate investor that's going to fix up a property. Think about it for a second, what takes place, right? Yes, I'm getting a loan secured by real estate and getting above average interest, right? But what else is happening? That real estate investor is taking a blight in our community, an ugly house or something like that. He's taking time to fix it up, you know, and when he does that, he's creating jobs and buying things from local places and so forth and that. And in the end, what happens? The white picket fence goes up and, you know, Biff, Miffy, the little dog Muffy move in, right? We create the American dream. So when you think about it, in a lot of the disaster situations, some of the first money coming in to fix things up, some of the first money coming to buy things and do things is often private money. It's the money that comes in. So there is a lot of good aspects that are social, you know, social benefits to all of us through the use of self-directed IRAs. And of course, also there are people that invest in socially conscious type of funds and things like that through self-directed IRAs as well. But I probably think one of the biggest benefits is just allowing you to invest in the things that you know and understand. I've often had the opportunity to educate some very smart people about self-directed IRAs. And some of these people are the professionals in their fields, you know. They're They're the professional, they know all about oil wells, or they know all about real estate. They're all this stuff. And I ask them, oh, what is your retirement account in? They're like, oh, I got some mutual funds. I'm like, oh, do you know a lot about that too? They're like, no, you know, and it always baffles me. You should, if there's something that you really know about, if you're good at real estate, do that, right? If you're good at oil wells, do that. Whatever it is that you can do, if you can apply your own skills and knowledge. And what's amazing is all of us have skills and knowledge that we may not understand, that we could apply to our investing, that we may have not recognized. So part of one of the things that we're trying to do through these education courses is get you to recognize some of the abilities and some of the things that you can do. It's actually a lot of fun once you get to knowing those things. If a self-directed IRA isn't a type of IRA, then what are the types of IRAs that we have? Well, I'm going to break them up into 3 different categories: personal plans, employer plans, and then we have some specialty plans. The ones you hear a lot about is traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. Roth IRAs are really important. I think that it is one of the cornerstones of building wealth. I honestly believe that as soon as you have qualified earned income, even if you're working at McDonald's at 16, you should open a Roth IRA. You see, with a Roth IRA, your distributions, once you've met 2 requirements, over the age of 59 and a half, and having had a Roth IRA for 5 tax years, come out completely tax-free, including all of the growth. So if you take a little bit of money and over time make it worth a whole bunch of money, wouldn't it be better to pay the tax on the little bit of money than the whole bunch? Now with Roth IRAs, when we put the contribution in, we don't get a tax deduction. But as it grows tax-free, and that is an amazing way to go. Often with Roth IRAs, we are also using them to build wealth generational. Because with a Roth IRA, if I put money into it, it will grow tax-free for the rest of my life. I don't have to remove it with what's called required minimum distributions. Other accounts at the age of 70 and a half start to have required minimum distributions. Right? We don't have to do that. And when I die, I can pass it on. If it goes to my spouse, she can keep it for the rest of her life. And then when she passes on, it could go on to our children, and they can let it grow tax-free for an additional 10 years. So how long will a Roth grow tax-free? For a long time, for the rest of your life, and at least another 10 years. So in that, we've also used it as wealth building strategies. So as I talk to investors, especially real estate investors, all around, I'll be like, which one of these accounts is the most important to you? A traditional IRA or a Roth IRA? And of course, all the gurus all talk about Roth IRAs. I'm professing about it. So everyone goes Roth IRA. And that's actually wrong. The traditional IRA is super important. And why? And the reason is because most people's retirement money end up in a traditional IRA. You have an account like a 401k, 403b, 457, thrift saving plan, any of these types of accounts where you put some money in, your employer puts some money in, they get a tax deduction, you get a tax deduction, right? And over a period of time, it grows into a great big old bucket of money. The problem is, well, with that money is we've never paid taxes on it. Well, there is good news, right? Everybody in America, regardless of their income limit, regardless of their age, at any time, and with no penalties, can move their traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. What did I miss? That's right. Whenever we move traditional money or taxable money to a tax-free account, that is a taxable event. Doesn't have any penalties associated with it, but it does add to the modified adjusted growth income. Let's take a look at it from the perspective of average Americans, right? So if an average American reaches retirement age and went in to talk to a financial planner and said, man, I'd like to take my traditional IRA and turn it into a Roth IRA because I want it to grow completely tax-free. Financial advisor might point out, listen, it took you a long time to make that bucket of money. It took your whole life. And we've got to be safe with it. And when they're talking about being safe, they're talking about lower returns. And the problem is, if you convert all that money, what's going to happen is you're going to get a 1099 and you never see it in it. You're going to have to pay all this tax on this money, maybe at the most onerous rate because it's a large amount. And because you're getting a very low return, that depletion of the money in the beginning will take so long to make up, it doesn't make sense to do a Roth conversion. Good things we're not average. We're real estate investors and people out there looking to do something that's a little bit more progressive. And so if you think about that, if you buy real estate where you're getting both appreciation and cash flow, if you're able to loan money at a secured by real estate at a larger rate of interest, those things are going to produce money faster. Let's give you an example. Let's say it's January and I do a Roth conversion. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to fix it up and sell it. When would I have to pay my taxes on that? If I took it from my traditional IRA, I converted it to a Roth, right? A couple $100,000 or something like that. I assume I have to pay very onerous tax rate, 30 or 40%, right? So a huge tax bill. But when would I have to pay that tax bill? Well, I'd have that full year, and then until the tax filing deadline, or usually around April 15th. So basically 16 months. For a professional, could they buy a house, fix it up, and sell it in 16 months? Most likely. Could they make 20, 30, or 40%? Most likely. Are there individuals that could do that several times over in that time period? There are. I don't happen to be one of them, but there are, right, out there. So I'm just saying it depends on how you can take your money and make it worth more money. If you can do it fast enough before you need it, doing a Roth conversion may make a lot of sense to you. The other things that you may want to consider is only converting the amount you need for a particular investment instead of trying to convert the whole pot. There's a lot to consider about a Roth conversion. So we have a class that we really like to teach. It's Roth conversion, learning how to supercharge your tax-free wealth. It's free to you online. Just go to Quest Trust and you can pick it up there. In addition to our personal plans, we have employer plans. And in this class, I'm not going to talk a lot about our employer plans. They're a lot more complicated. Now, most of us have an employer plan at work. Just like me, I'm a W-2 employee of Quest, so I have a 401k at work, and that's my employer plan. Until I've had separation of service, I've left my job, then I don't have access to that typically until I can move it into an IRA to self-directed. I have to pick the investment choices that my employer provides for me, right? But so most of us that are self-directing are using an old 401k from a previous employer that's been moved into a traditional IRA or just our traditional IRAs. But there are those of us that are either self-employed or have a small business. And these accounts can be used for those as well. And this is like a menu. This is why I break it up this way. You can have a Roth IRA, and let's say you were a realtor and had Schedule C income, you could have any of these, a SEP IRA, a simple IRA, or there's also this really powerful product called a solo 401k. Right? The solo 401k is super powerful, super good. We do offer that at Quest, but it's also super dangerous and it's not appropriate for everybody. Right? If you're interested in more information about our employer plans, go to our Maximizing Your Self-Employment Income with our solo 401k, SEP IRA, or simple IRA. Boy, that's a long name for a class. But anyway, go to that class online and you'll find plenty of good information about it. And also, you can also always call or speak to any of our IRA specialists and they'll guide you to where to get some of these education and find them on the line. So, right? These last count, health savings account and covered accounts, these are like the dessert plans. You can, like I said, it's like a menu. These are super. Both these grow completely tax-free. And most people are blown away by how versatile these are, especially when used with self-direction. Let me talk about each of these just for a minute. A health savings account, we'll start with it. A health savings account is an unusual account. It's designed to go with a type of insurance called a high deductible health plan. So you have to have that type of insurance in order to have a health savings account. It's often misunderstood. Now, what's amazing about high deductible plans, they weren't very well used when they first came out. But as the medical industry changed and the ability for the deductibles to change, they became a very popular plan. Most employers offer it. I know we offer 2 of them here at Quest. Health savings accounts are also get confused with something called a flexible spending account, which didn't work very well if you had to use it up by the end of the year. With health savings accounts, you can make contributions into them, and your contributions you make are tax deductible. But when you remove money out of the account for qualified medical expenses, which is very broad, including dental and optical and all types of other things, including like holistic medicine, when we remove that money, it comes out completely tax-free. And you can use it for expenses not only for you, but also your spouse or any dependents you have on your tax return, even if they're not on the insurance policy. And in the future, if you change types of insurance policies, you can't continue to contribute to the HSA, but you get to keep it and it grows tax-free. And if we're good real estate investors and we know how to take money and make it worth more money, especially with these little accounts, oh my God, this is fun. Let me give you a story so you can kind of understand, because I threw a lot of facts at you. Here's something I did with my health savings account years ago. Years ago, I had opened a health savings account and made a contribution into it. The contributions aren't very large for health savings accounts, and it depends on what type of insurance you have, whether it's a family plan or if you're just insuring yourself. At that year, my maximum contribution was like $5,600. It's gone up a little bit since then. But at 50, I put that money in to my HSA. What happened? I immediately got a tax deduction, right? Dollar for dollar, reduced my taxes by $5,600. That particular year, my wife had a dental surgery. It was very expensive, about $30,000. I could have just put the money in the health savings account and taken it out, and that would have been worth doing, right? Why? Well, because when I put it on, I got a tax deduction, I took it out, and I could pay for the teeth. That's not what I did. I put the money into the health savings account and I let it grow. And I've let it grow or made it grow through an investment strategy called partnering. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay. But I partnered it and it grew into a pretty good account. And about 4 or 5 years later, I had this funny thing. It's called a midlife crisis. I don't know if any of you have experienced this yet, but I decided I needed to get an airplane. I did. I went out and bought a 1952 Cessna 170B because Harrison Ford had something that looked like it. Later, I found out his was a Beaver, mine was a Cessna, but whatever. It looked cool. But I needed it after a while. I needed a new airplane engine, and I didn't have the money. So what did I do? That goes about $40,000, very similar to the amount that the teeth cost. I was able to go to my health savings account and remove the money from my health savings account, tax-free and penalty-free, and buy an airplane engine. Is an airplane engine a qualified medical expense? Clearly not. It's a toy, right? How did I do it? Well, once again, I can use receipts from years past. And not only my receipts, but the receipts from me and my spouse and my children that were on my tax returns. And not only for just unpaid medical, but medical, dental, optical, and a whole lot more. Got a great class about health savings accounts and how to use them. But they're one of these accounts that you can actually use to create money and have benefits right now, not necessarily into the future. Anyway, I think it's an amazing account. Another one that's really interesting is a Coverdell education account. Again, this is one of these that works well for us investors, better than it does maybe general public, and I'll explain why. You only get a couple of grand a year, $2,000 a year to put in per child, all right? And and when you put it in, you don't get a tax deduction. It's like a Roth IRA, it grows tax-free. So think about it. And you have to stop when you're 18. So the most you could put in, if you're really diligent and you started when they were a child, is $36,000. And you're probably not going to invest that in something really aggressive because it's the kid's college money. Therefore, it's a little bit of money, a short period of time. That means very little tax gain. Maybe a 529 plan or one of the other type of plans might work better for you. But here's a story to how a real estate investor used a Coverdell and self-direction very wisely. This is a true story. He opened an account, Coverdell education account, in the name of his minor child, right? And he made a small contribution, I believe it was $100. And then from there, wrote out a check for a wholesale property in order to put a property under contract. He later was able to sell that contract, matter of fact, in a very short period of time, for a cash amount to another buyer. He took basically less than $100 and turned it into almost $10,000 in a matter of a week. Yeah, he did that completely tax-free. Of course, you could do that strategy. This isn't about the investment. This guy had a deal. Like, I got that. He had skills, right? And he could have done this deal outside of his Coverdell, but then he would have had to pay a lot of taxes. Everyone follow that? But you could repeat that same deal in a Roth IRA or the health savings account, but he chose to do it in a Coverdell. And why? Because he had a child that was 8 years old attending private school, and he was actually able to go to the Coverdell and remove that money. Pay attention to this, especially during COVID right now. He could remove that money from the Coverdell tax-free and penalty-free. Why? Because Coverdells, unlike any other education accounts, are for kindergarten through college. And they can pay for books, tuition, private schools, tutors. Anyone using any of those things during COVID? I would think so, right? But here's something that's amazing. But also electronic equipment, right? And internet needed to doing homework. What am I talking about? You got it. Internet for your house, computers for them to do their homework are also qualified education expenses. And if you've got the ability to take a little bit of money, make it worth a whole bunch of money, you could be paying for those tax-free. Watch my special accounts for special expenses, right? You'll really enjoy that class. It's a lot of fun there. And again, all of those accounts can be self-directed. But I'm going to show you a little trick. I alluded to it a little bit ago, right? About the health savings account, is these accounts can be partnered together. That's right. So we'll find out in a minute about disqualified people. There are things that often these accounts can't do together: buy, sell, trade, or extend services. But we could take people who are disqualified to each other, and we could partner them together. I often do this. So when my story with my health savings account, I took my health savings account, which didn't have very much value. How did I make it grow? Well, I partnered it with a larger account I had. And when I did that, it allowed me to invest in things that this little account normally couldn't invest in. And so it like rode on the coattails. Now, as the money came back in, it came back proportionate to the percentage of ownership, but over time, it allowed it to grow. We'll see some examples of that as we go on. Now it's time to talk about the restrictions. And the restrictions need to be taken very seriously. If you do a restriction in an IRA, it becomes what's called a prohibited transaction. Prohibited transactions are and can be one of the highest fine areas of IRS codes. Because it doesn't only affect the investment, it affects the entire retirement account and can be very onerous and fine. So we want to try not to do it. Hopefully this little section will do a lot to keep you from ever doing a prohibited transaction. There are three types of restrictions on IRAs we're worried about. There are people restriction, there are transaction restrictions, and there are investment restrictions. We'll break them all up. The biggest one that gets us, and we're going to start with it, is the people. There are people that we call disqualified persons. Those are persons who cannot benefit, right, from any of the investments the IRA makes. They can't do anything with them. They can't buy, sell, trade, extend a service, or receive a benefit either directly or indirectly from the investments they make. Who are these disqualified people? Well, that's you. It sounds really strange, but yes, you are disqualified from your IRA. What does that mean? The idea behind an IRA is it's to entice you to save for a reason, right? If it's a retirement account, we're saving for retirement. If it's a health savings account, we're saving for healthcare. If it's a Coverdell, we're saving for children's education. Everyone follow that? And the idea is your benefit to that account is when you take the money out and spend it. But while it's being held in this account, you can't invest it in such a way that benefits you personally. And they designed it this way, again, to force you to save for the future. So you are a disqualified person to your IRA. Again, you can't buy, sell, trade, or extend services. In addition to you, there's a group of people who are equally disqualified. And I made this simple little chart for you to memorize, and you guys have it, right? I'm just teasing. The chart's not as complicated as you think. The people who are disqualified to your IRA include you, your spouse, your lineal ascendants and descendants, children and parents, their spouses, and companies those people own, control, manage, or highly compensated by. So just putting an LLC or something in there doesn't stop it. I'm going to repeat that again. You, spouse, children, parents, their spouses, and companies those people own, control, manage, or consider highly compensated employees by. Did I say brothers, sisters, cousins, stepchildren? No. It's a very specific list, and it's really designed to follow what's typically the inherited rules or legs. Now we're going to talk about the prohibited transactions. And the good news is we kind of already did, right? Because prohibited transactions are just the things that the disqualified people can't do, which is buy, sell, trade, loan, extend services, or receive a benefit directly or indirectly. All right. And then there's the last category, right? Which is investment restrictions. These are direct investment restrictions. This doesn't get too many people because there's only two of them. It is life insurance contracts and collectibles. And collectibles are specifically defined as works of art, gems or metal, or yes, alcoholic beverage collections. You cannot buy that in your IRA. We've got a great class about prohibited transactions that we get into it deeply. You can always pick up the phone if you have a transaction that you're thinking about doing. We can't give tax, legal, or investment advice, but we can provide education so you can understand what you're doing before you do it. And the education services requests are free, whether you're a client or not a client with another company. We don't care. We just want you to make sure that you are getting the education to make the right decisions. We'll win your business over eventually. What can you invest with a self-directed IRA? Well, honestly, anything that you can take title to. At Quest, we try to break it down into three categories: real estate, what we call private entities, and promissory notes. Real estate is the direct purchase of real estate, when we own real estate directly in an IRA. Private entities is when the IRA invests into either a startup or a limited liability company, limited partnership, joint venture, or even a trust. So when we're investing into an entity, and then the entity usually invests into something. Sometimes the entities are running a business, but most of the time they're investment entities. And then we have a lot of people that like to do like what I like to do, which is lend. They can loan with loans secured by real estate through a deed of trust or a mortgage. They could loan on other type of security instruments. You often see like medical equipment or big building equipment, things, oil well equipment, that type of stuff, or even unsecured. We see all different types of notes. And we have a different department for each different types of transactions, so we can have specialists that are familiar with what you're doing there. The process is pretty simple. You open an account. That's just basically you call up, you talk to an IRA specialist or a new accounts person. They'll help you open the account, which is name, rank, and serial number, and who gets it when you die. You have to fund that account. Often people are transferring funds from another IRA or an old 401k. But there's other times, like when we're opening a Roth IRA, we might be making a small contribution because we don't, or a Coverdell or a health savings account. We can also make those yearly contributions into those accounts. You must locate your investment or know what to invest, and that's the part that Quest doesn't help with. right? Where it must be neutral third party. You can't say, is this a good investment? Where should I put my money? We don't know. We talk about a lot of things, but you have to know, I want to take my money and I want to buy this house on 3rd Street. I want to take my money and I want to loan it to Bob, right? You complete some investment forms. These are just the forms that will help you to fill out. Our transaction specialists will go over them with you. They're just you telling us what you want to do, right? And Quest will fund the investment. Let's take a look at some case studies in each of those different categories and see if we can learn something by some things that other people have done. This is an office condo. In other words, it's not the whole building. It's just like one of these units. You've seen these things with the dental offices and stuff. 2 of our clients, John and Jay, decided they wanted to purchase this. Okay. It only cost about $250,000. Okay. They were expecting about a $50,000 worth of rehab. So what they did is they each opened an account with Quest. They transferred $150,000 over. This wasn't all the money that they needed for the transaction, or this was all the money they had. This is the money they needed for a transaction. And again, the extra money was to do the rehab that they were expecting afterwards. They made an offer to purchase the property. Now, it's not John or Jay making that offer. It's actually Quest for the benefit of John's IRA. So all of that goes in there. And Quest for the benefit of Jay's IRA, and all that goes in there. I know it doesn't fit in that little line. You got to like make it fit. I can't help that. It's a lot, especially sometimes when I do these. I may have 4 or 5 different IRAs in one investment, and you really got to add an addendum or something just to get the name to fit. We complete a direction of investment letter. Again, that's that little form that just says, hey, I'm buying this house and I'm going to put this money down, and we'll help you to fill that out. You mark things read and approved, but the actual signer is Quest. Okay. There was a $10,000 earnest money, so $5,000 came out of each account, and we sent it directly to the title company. Notice you're never involving your money in this deal. You're never signing anything. Okay. At closing, John and Jay approve all the documents, but again, Quest signs the documents and directly wires the funds into the title company. And the title company adds something to the name. See this here? It says, as to an undivided interest of 50%. This is what's identifying the interest that each IRA has. Remember my story about my health savings account? It might have been on 95% to one IRA and 5% to the other. All right. In this case, he hired a property manager to oversee the units. Okay. They found a tenant. And rents and expenses were handled by the property manager, and you can see they get $850 a month. Now, I know that seems a little low for some people, but thinking what they did is they actually negotiated the renters were going to do the rehab. They had to move this heavy like dental equipment in and stuff, and so they paid for the cost of the rehab, and they negotiated a cheap rent for a period of about 2 years. And was a good trade-off for John and Jay, because that extra $50,000, they never actually had to use it. They sent that back to the other title, back to their other financial advisor. The property manager submits the net proceeds to Quest, right? So as gets those checks, they come back and they can check all that stuff through their client stuff online. What happened a couple of years later is their dental business was doing good. It was time for the rents to go up, and instead of paying extra rents, they offered to purchase the property. John and Jay happily sold the property. They sold it for $395. On the day of closing, the funds were wired directly back into the account at Quest, right? And they did pretty good on this investment. They started with $125,000. They picked up $11,000 in rent, $62,000 for the sale, for about 59% gains over a pretty good period, 26 months. So pretty fair investment for one. It was one of the first deals they did. They've gone on and repeated this process several different times and seem to be very pleased with it. Let's look at some points to the story. John and Jay didn't pay any tax on that transaction at all. Because they paid cash for this inside their IRA, there's no tax due at all. Matter of fact, they don't have to do a lot of the accounting that you may do with a normal rental property because it's held inside an IRA. They did do this in a SEP IRA, which is like a traditional IRA. It grows tax deferred. So they'll pay tax on it someday when they take that money out. It'll add to the modified adjusted growth income at that time, right? But if they had done this in a Roth IRA, the Roth portion of a Roth 401k, a covered education account, or a health savings account, those gains would be tax-free forever for qualified distributions, right? And John and Jay were in total control of the process from beginning to end, but Quest is the actual buyer and seller of the property. Again, that may seem weird to you, but if you actually think about it in relationship to how you buy and sell stocks, you don't run down to the New York Stock Exchange and jump up and down with a little piece of paper, right? Your custodian does that for you. And the stock is also held at the custodian's office. Just in this case, the note or the deed of trust would also be held. The deed would be held at that Quest office as well. And John and Jay never removed any money from their IRA to buy real estate. That's not what they did at all. They directed their IRA to buy real estate. The money never came out, just like you direct your IRA to buy a stock. That's why there's no taxable event. We took an asset of cash, exchanged it for an asset of real estate. We received some rents, and then we exchanged it back to an asset of cash. Compare it to a stock. We took an asset of cash. We received a stock. We then got some dividends, and then we sold it in the future. Again, the stock never left the IRA, neither does the house. IRAs can partner with other IRAs or even non-IRAs. But when we do this, all expenses and proceeds must be split according to the percentage of ownership. We can do this pretty easy at Quest because our systems do that. Like payment comes in and there's multiple IRAs on it. It will split that up to the different accounts. They didn't need to have a property manager in this story they just did. We have a very robust system for accepting payments, and it's very easy for people to do that. Most people just do it online because you just track it and see what's happened. You can just have your renters, or if it's a loan, your lenders, you can do that either way. Let's see. Again, great class if you want to buy real estate directly. I teach it. It's called Buying Real Estate and IRAs, Sticky Situations and How to Solve Them. Because anyone knows that real estate is complicated. And so things do come up, and it is somewhat different in an IRA versus outside an IRA. Great class. If you're going to do that, highly recommend that. Let's take a look at a commercial property. I love this. This is actually just a letter that someone wrote me thanking me for the services. And I'll tell you the story. This was a couple. They were both engineers. They worked very hard throughout the course of their life, and they had over $1 million, just over $1 million between the two of them in their retirement accounts. They heard about self-directed IRA. They were receiving some outside coaching, so they did have some coaching in here. I'm going to tell a story. It's a pretty amazing story, but there's a problem in here. I'll see if you can spot it. Okay. What they did is they decided they wanted to buy an apartment complex. And so they took the property and were able to obtain a non-recourse loan to their IRA. So their IRA got the loan. All right. Here's kind of a breakdown of it. And they purchased an apartment complex for just under $2 million. There was over $200,000 in repairs that needed to be done, right? You can see the loan amount that they got for $1.1 million. That loan amount came from North American Savings Bank, by the way. Did have a 5-year balloon, but it amortized over 20 years. They were able to hold the property for a period of time and fix it up during that period of time, and then were able to resell it for $3.6 million. Making a net gain of $1.4 million in their first transaction, more than they have made their entire life as hardworking, highly educated individuals. So Nathan, you're like, wow, Nathan, that's pretty amazing. What's the problem? Here's what I would say the problem is. They kind of put all their eggs in one big basket, right? They took all their retirement account and put it in one thing, and then they doubled down by borrowing as well. So that's creates even more risk in there. So I don't know. Personally, I think it would have been good for them maybe to partner with someone else or find someone, or be part of this deal instead of the whole deal. But they're very happy with the return. They actually have gone on to repeat this and have done it other times. They're also at an age where they can remove some of that money to spend it on themselves, so they didn't mind it being in the IRA. So again, I've got a class that just talks a lot about buying commercial properties and the things and the pitfalls and things that you want to look for about that. Here's a case study of the thing I love to do, right? Which is loan money. Man, this works a lot for me. Why? Because for me, owning rental property is great, but there's toilets and tenants and all the things that you have to deal with it. Flipping property is hard. I just like lending. It works for me. So, and a lot of people, you're going, oh, I got my IRA. I was trying to figure out how I can make money right now. Well, you can make money right now. You use O.P.I. And I'm not talking about nail polish. I'm talking about other people's IRAs, right? You take your IRA, if you're an investor, and you invest it for your future. Then you use other people's IRAs to create a private bank, right? If you're a real estate investor and have the ability to walk up and buy any property because you have the backing of private money, that's super powerful. Private money moves very quickly. It can close fast. And as a real estate investor, it's one of the best sources for you, right? You need to have a relationship with the banks and other things, but also private money means everything. There are trillions of dollars in retirement accounts. Right? At every single gathering, there's millions of dollars available for investment. And think about what I was talking about, social investing and investing in the things that you know best. For most people that are throwing a mutual fund, don't you think that a loan secured by real estate, getting an above average interest in the city where they live, work, and play, and if something goes wrong, it's pretty easy to take that property back and do something with it? It's a great choice for so many Americans, right? Here's an example, okay? This is just a property after repairs. It's going to be worth $127. This was done a little bit ago. They borrowed $95,000 from a private money lender. That was enough to purchase the property and fix it up, okay? I think a little bit of money came out of the pocket from the investor. The interest rate you see here is going to be pretty high. It's 2 points, 12%. Lately, I've been seeing that come down quite a bit from that, because there just seems to be a little bit more private money. But the deal is, it is a negotiation. It's a private negotiation between the person with the money and the person borrowing the money. And this is what they negotiated. And a lot of people go, wow, that's really expensive. Is it? If Tom goes to a traditional bank, and even if he got a 6 or 7% commercial type of loan, he's going to have a lot of fees associated with that, the appraisal fee, and because it's a short-term loan, all those fees may cost a lot more than paying a higher interest rate to a private person with less fees, because the only fees that he had to pay for there was the fees to drop the note and deed of trust. Of course, the bank has that, and some Quest fees. My average client's, a few $100s a year in Quest fees, and that's it. So it's not very much money to be able to do this for him. And it's a great return for the IRA, win-win situation. I think this makes all the sense in the world. So key points to this: you cannot loan money from your IRA to yourself or any other disqualified person. And you and the borrower are free to set your own terms. Quest cannot be involved with that and doesn't do that. And IRAs can loan money all different types of ways: convertible notes, unsecured notes, if you're crazy, if you want to, or insured by other things like equipment or mobile homes. Got a great class. I've got several classes about how to borrow and lend money from self-directed IRAs. And I like that class because it helps protect you if you want to lend. It also helps teach you how to borrow money. People often don't know how to approach those relationships. And so those classes may help you with that. Remember, Quest offers endless free education. I've touched on a lot of subjects here, but there's all different types of ways to reach Quest, right? You can go to our website, and this is a list of some of the classes we have. There's classes that are always changing, and they're not always just taught by us. We bring in other experts and professionals to help with it, right? And so much more. You can also, we have education on YouTube, as Facebook as well. You can look up Quest Trust Company and get lots of things there. We also have all types of weekly webinars every Tuesday and Thursday at noon, where we're bringing in other professionals to help teach things, help learn. The more we learn, the more educated we are, the better investors we're all going to be. Every Saturday, we do the same thing, have a little bit longer event on our Saturdays. We also have networking events. These are computer network events. But prior to COVID, we had tons of networking events live. People would come and meet each other. Often people would be looking for IRA money. We couldn't tell you where to get it, but we could invite everyone in the room and you can meet our clients yourself. That's kind of hard after COVID. So we've been doing these through Zoom. And so we have these happy hours where people can talk about their investments and exchange their have, wants, and needs with each other. So tons of education. You can go to our website and get those online. But also, if you have a question, just take the time to talk to one of our IRA specialists. Remember, these are completely neutral. They're not being paid a commission in any way, shape, or form. So they're highly educated. If you're a certified IRA specialist with Quest, you took a really hard test, you've had to have years of service, and they're available to ask your questions all the time. How do you get in touch with one? Well, one way is during business hours, we have a live chat right on our website. And this is quick for quick and easy questions that are, how do I do or where to go? And this is not manned by some, crazy person off in that. These are actually manned by our IRA specialists themselves. As soon as you get on chat, you'll be talking to an IRA specialist. Probably one of the best things is to just pick up the phone and call Quest and ask for an IRA specialist if it's your first time out. They'll guide you to who to talk to as you need each and everything you go through, right? Or just email us, IRA Specialist at Quest Trust. And that way we can send you information or classes or things that might be relevant to you. I hope this has been good for you. I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed teaching these classes. I hope that they go on and help you to have very successful and happy investing. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Nathan Long, president of Quest Trust Company. Good luck to you all.